What up guys, Rancer890, welcome back to more iRacing. Like the Mid-Ohio, and the VIR videos, as well as the Watkins Glen video, this is another track guide. Another horrible track guide, because Sonoma is one tricky track. And yes, we are at Sonoma, also home of the season finale of the Real Life IndyCar Series, the GoPro Grand Prix of Sonoma. Real life, so really coming down to, I think it's a 3-point advantage that Joseph Newgarden has over Scott Dixon. Correct me if I'm wrong. But as well as the other 3 Penske cars are also in the mix, although not as likely, but you never know, given that the last race of the season is a double points race. So yeah, in real life it's going to be a very fun race to watch. So many of us fans who aren't able to strap into a real IndyCar and experience the thrill of racing. There's always sim racing, and here on iRacing, where the Verizon IndyCar Series on the sim is also has the race. Open setups, I believe it's 32 laps. I don't remember how long it was, but it's the usual length of 40 to 50 minutes on road courses, depending on the length. So yeah, unlike the Verizon IndyCar Series, this is week 1 of 2017 Season 4. So there's a lot of excitement in the air. If we're not in tune with iRacing, there's the new dynamic track with how, because of the previous bug where the dynamic track wasn't exactly working. Oh boy, I made a mistake in that corner. If qualifying was attached to the session. So I personally have not. Well, I have done one race, and it was in the 410 wing sprint at Eldora. I think it was at Eldora. So yeah, I haven't done an IndyCar race yet. This is just a test session. Default weather as usual. I wonder if you can see the new Monster Energy signs, because they have also updated all the signage from the old Sprint Cup, NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. So I guess it's probably time to talk about the lap. Sonoma is probably Sonoma and iRacing. I like the track in general. I just don't like the iRacing track just because of the lack of brake markers. So it's actually really hard to actually, if you're new to this the series on iRacing, it's pretty much have to YOLO braking points, which I kind of did. I started practicing week 13, so I'm not. Oh, I just noticed there's some nationwide signs. So so yeah, in week 13 I started practicing. Well, that was okay. I didn't really get it out by Monday just because my setup wasn't ready. I didn't really feel confident giving a good setup guide. But now that I've managed to find some resemblance of consistency, I decided to, okay, let's do a guide now. So ideally, I want to do it before the week starts, before the new season week starts. But I just didn't really feel comfortable enough with the set to really make it work. So Sonoma, let's pick it up. Okay, so Sonoma is, if you're not familiar with Sonoma at all, or with this configuration, it is the IndyCar IRL layout. It has, it's actually a bit different from the real IndyCar course. So I'm just gonna take some of this data off Wiki. 2.2 miles, 11 turns. lap record is a 16.4. So I'm not sure if that's with the new course or what, but safe to say that right now I am faster. Like, I think most of my laps are faster than the 16.4. So yeah, there's a lot of elevation, especially there's that carousel. There's that left-hander carousel. Well, no, not left-hander. Left-hander carousel that you have to worry about that we're just going through now. That is probably one of the places that you could try and make it past at. Sonoma, like real life, as on the sim, is not a great passing track. You're more likely to have to rely on the mistakes of other drivers, especially since the top of the competition is just so thin. So yeah, I think I should probably stop rambling and start going through a good lap. So let's go through a good lap right now. So this is, I believe, a 15.3. So kind of low on fuel here, as you can see. So only 3 gallons, a bit over, almost 4 gallons. So I know I usually don't talk during the lap, but I'm not really going to talk about like how you take the different corners and stuff. So I'll get back to you when the lap is finished. Okay, hopefully that lap was kind of useful. I guess we'll just try and break it down right now. So fuel-wise, we're at 4 gallons, as I said in the quick lap. So I'm obviously near the end of the stint, but even at the beginning of the stint, I was in the 15s. So I think it was 15.7.6. So we'll just go through some of the things in this lap. So we're entering turn 1. We kind of want to be to the right because it's a left-hander. I think we'll just keep going from there. So here we're entering turn 2, I suppose. I sometimes experiment with a bit of a couple different lines. One line where I go right to the wall, and the other line where I take more of a centralized approach. I'm still to the right on the racetrack, but I'm not exactly aiming to be right at the wall and then turning left towards the upper S's. I feel that if you're too far to the right, I feel that you kind of lose a bit of speed. I don't have any scientific data to back this up. It's just based on the feeling with regards to the setup that I have. So you kind of want to stay towards, you want to stay to the right, but not all the way to the wall. Maybe give a half car length towards the wall, and you should be able to have a good entrance into the upper S's. So here, this is where I believe I start to brake. Here. So you kind of, if you brake a bit late with this setup, I feel like you kind of lose a lot of rear traction and you kind of oversteer. So it's best to brake a bit early. Try and make sure that you hit the 2 apexes. If you don't hit one of the apexes, you lose a 10th. around a tenth. So so basically, if you don't hit the first two corners, you're already down 2/10. So exit is much more important than how you enter these first couple corners, because I could take enough speed into this left-hander, but then as I go into the right, I kind of go off the racing line, and then I lose a tenth there. So try and make sure. I think it's much easier to just scrub a bit of speed before you enter the turn, just so you can make sure that you can hit both apexes, because if you don't, you just lose so much momentum. I kind of missed the apex there at that point. So here, try not to hit this curb. You kind of see how it's angled and ridged. I think they made that way so you're not supposed to hit it. Get as close to it. Make sure the right side of your, not the right side, the left side of your car, the wheels are towards that yellow line as close as you can get without hitting it. So your left side tire should not hit any part of that curb. If you do, you lose another tenth. So potentially more, depending on where the curb sends you off in this track. So here I am going from 4th to 2nd gear. Earlier, when I started testing, I considered going down to 1st, but I have too much wheel spin. As you can see from the setup I'm using Fuel Map 1, which is linear to how much pedal input, throttle pedal input that you use with your right foot. So you have to be very careful. So I think not many people on the service really uses it. I know I do. I know Christian does as well, but I don't know how many. I don't know if a lot of other drivers, some drivers on iRacing, who use Map 1 every week on road courses. So here you could go down to 1 first gear. I'm not saying you can't. It's just that there's just too much wheel spin for me to matter. And even in 2nd gear, I'm kind of on the edge of making sure that I keep the car under me. So I think a couple laps during this particular replay run, I kind of had to modulate the throttle even in 2nd gear, just to make sure that the car doesn't spin, just because of how oversteer the setup is on exit. So your mileage may vary, of course. So don't hit. Try and hit this one though. Try and hit this one to the right. But if you hit too much of the curb, you lose another tenth. So be wary of that. In addition to your car going slightly airborne, you will have a chance of losing control. So yeah, this first complex is very tricky, especially if you're new to the car and new to the series. So I hit it well pretty there. So over here, kind of wanna, let's see where I brake. So yeah, I brake around here. So that's maybe where the edge of this little arrow screen, if you can really call it an arrow screen, where the top of the edge meets the edge of the rumble strip is when you start braking. You're going to go down from 2nd gear to 1st gear. Your goal is to hit the apex on the right. So you'll see it soon. I hit it pretty good there. It's going to be a bit bumpy. Make sure that on exit you touch the curbs to your left, and then you're going to go into this right-hander and going into the left-hander, which is the carousel turn. I'll talk about that. Full throttle. So here you brake. Let's see. You brake where you see the porta potty to your right. Um, I usually don't look at the porta potty. My general reference is when I feel that we're starting to go down, going downhill, I just start braking and I go from fourth to third gear. I don't usually go into second, very rarely. So here here's a bit different. I think it's a lot based on preference. On the carousel, I actually usually run two different lines. It's really, the two lines are based on feel, not fuel, but feel, and how the car is handling, whether it's understeering or oversteering. In this lap, I usually take in this lap I took the line right close to the yellow line. If I feel that the car is a bit tight, I usually take more. I don't go right towards the yellow line. I usually take more of a central approach and then try and take it, keep the car under me that way. I usually take the center line when the car's a bit understeery, just because I go on throttle a bit later in the center line. But if my car is understeering and I still try and stick with this yellow line, it's gonna get really, really tight on exit, and I'm not able to finish this corner flat out. So I'll tell you when we need to go flat out. So the easy reference in going flat out through this carousel at Sonoma is when you see the rumble strips. I think over here I not at the rumble strips, just when you start seeing it. You can probably modulate it a little bit depending on the car, the feel level, how the car is feeling, and so forth and so forth. But this is the general guideline when I want to start accelerating while we're here. Make sure that you hit the curb to your right. So here, do I have another reference? My reference is usually that lamppost. I don't think there's anyone. So usually, when I start seeing the lamppost, maybe from here looks like a couple car lengths. I think around a couple car lengths. That's when I start braking. This is a tricky corner. This is another tricky corner on this track. If you obviously if you start braking too early, you're gonna lose time. But if you start braking too late, like another car length, you're gonna be going too fast into this. They call it a double apex. Let's call it a double corner. I'm terrible at these things. I'm terrible at explaining. But anyways, the main important part is that if you brake too late, you're going to miss the first right-hander, and you're going to be a bit tight into the second right-hander onto the next section of the track. So the best idea is to brake early enough so that you can maintain enough cornering speed so that you're not in a bad position after the next two right-hand turns. So hit the apex, of course. So this is usually this corner is by far the toughest corner for me at this track. Given that I'm on a single screen monitor, I don't have VR. It doesn't really matter if it's an IndyCar or any other car on iRacing. It's usually a corner where I usually guess. My general idea is to utilize the darkened pavement, because that's really the only cue that I kind of have. And so I learned a couple little tricks here on approaching this corner and taking it. If you feel that if you feel that you're understeering, tap the brake a bit more to get it stopped quicker. So because if you don't see that second right, the curbs on the second right corner in this two corner part of the track, I think they call it a double apex. If you don't see that second rumble strip, you're losing 25 hundredths to 3/10 lap, guaranteed. But there is, if you take the outside line, even if you don't take the corner, you can somehow not lose as much time. But I haven't been able to do that consistently enough to tell you how to do it. So the general idea is to just hit both apexes and then you should be fine. So as you can see from the steering wheel, I am over 90 degrees to the right. You have to make sure that you don't hit the curb though with your right front tire, because if you do, you'll also lose another good 2/10. So yeah, this is probably one of the most important corners of the track, because if you mess up, you can try and make up some time in the rest of the track, but you can't gain back the 2/10. So just keep following. That's really the only advice I can really give to you, especially if you're on a triple monitor or VR headset setup. Then you can obviously see the corner and you can plan accordingly. But if you're single screen like me, you're gonna have to try and hope that you kind of hit the second apex. That's really the single monitor life. So here I kind of missed it. Here I definitely did miss it. I was trying to do a better lap than this just to show how to actually hit the apex, but I kind of missed it. Let's see how much I missed it by. Yeah, I kind of had, let's see. I kind of had almost a car length, not quite. So the fact that I still made a 15.3 was pretty good. And then make sure that even if you miss it, it's not the end of the world. My lap time was pretty good here, on this particular lap at least. So make sure that you do hit the curbs here with your left side tires, and then just follow the track. Try not to hit the curbs. This side doesn't really like it. So here is probably the second hardest corner of the track, or second hardest corner, complex of the track, just because of the lack of brake markers. On the real track in the Verizon IndyCar series, you will have 300, 200, 100, and then that's really very simple. But unfortunately on iRacing, we do not have such things. I have asked for brake markers. They have ignored me, so we're just going to have to make do with what we have right now. But the good news is I do have a trick. It won't work if you're following another car, because you should probably be looking at the car instead of the track. But I will tell you this trick right now. And let me see where I brake. I need to find it, actually. So on this track, you kind of see where the pavement kind of changes color a little bit. So you kind of see here where my car is, and everything. You see, if you see my front wing and put an imaginary line across the track, you'll kind of see that the pavement kind of changes color. So that is kind of where you start braking. Depending on the set, you'll probably be in 5th or 6th gear. So you're going to have to go from 5th or 6th gear down to 1st gear into this right-hander. So that's kind of my trick. If you're already on the black stuff, the darkened pavement, and you're just starting to brake, you're going to have to, you see those tire barriers right there? You're not going to make the corner, you're going to spin. So you're going to have to take that, take a little slow down through those tire barriers. So, yeah. And I think the slowdown is pretty bad. I think it's like 2.4 seconds. So try not to take the slowdown. Try and make sure that you hit your braking point, and yeah. So you're gonna go down to 5th, down to 1st. So hit this curb, but don't hit the curb to the left. Your mileage may vary depending on the set, but the set that I have does not like that second curb over there in that left-hander, so don't hit it. Touch it, like you can maybe graze it a little bit, but don't hit it. So these curves are fine. So this corner. This is probably the third hardest corner of the track. I'll be honest, I don't know how to explain this one very well because I generally do something different every single lap. But I'm kind of getting a bit more consistent with it. So you kind of have to start braking before this curve ends. So just like so basically when imagine the arrow string doesn't exist and you have this just front part of the car. So where the front part of the car touches the intersection between the yellow line as well as where the curb ends, that's when you have to start to brake. You're going to have to brake from 4th gear. You have to downshift from 4th to 1st gear. And this right-hander, you would want to cut a bit of the track. If you don't, you're just going to lose time, and you won't get a slowdown if you cut a bit of the track. But I haven't cut a lot of the track yet, so I don't know where the slowdown actually triggers at this corner. Yeah. So let's see where I start turning. So my wheel is still relatively straight. I'm using 60% throttle. Let me look at 60% throttle. 60% braking force. I don't really have a great. I suppose the best marker to look at when you're braking, which I personally have not used yet, but I could use this in the future, is the Sonoma sign to your right. You have to take a relatively sharp turn. Let's see how much. Not as sharp as that double right near the middle of the track, middle of your lap. Not 90 degrees, but actually, yes, 90 degrees. Just kidding. We're going to take a 90-degree, move the turn of the wheel to the right 90 degrees. You can cut a bit of it. I don't exactly know. So here in this lap, I took, actually, it's almost 100 degrees to the right. So in this lap, I took my right front tire was actually beyond the limit of the curbing here. So here, this is an interesting corner as well, because I also take this corner in a lot of different ways. I've tried taking a wider line, and I felt that I kind of lost a lot of time. So lately, or in this practice session, I took more of a tighter line, and I kind of felt that my times kind of improved or didn't drop as much. is usually for me, I kind of compromise this corner of the track just because it's just, I just don't really have the what's the word, consistency down yet. But I'm slowly but surely trying to figure things out. I think I might have figured things out just from this practice session. So yeah, I recommend not taking a wide line here just because you lose a lot of time. The other thing that you have to worry about here is the on throttle oversteer. If you just try and gun it, your rear tires are just going to spin, and you're going to be into a barrier. If you're not in your barrier, you're going to lose a lot of time. So ideally, be careful and accelerate gradually. So I'm pretty sure there's something you can do to the setup to alleviate it, but in this session, I was more worried about trying to make sure that the car doesn't spin, because early in the week I just had a lot of trouble trying to keep the car on track and being consistent. So once I figured out the consistency, I could make a video, and I could race, and I could probably worry about the little things like making sure that the car is stable, because this setup was probably going to be pretty challenging for a lot of people, especially if you're new, because of how unstable it is. So yeah. So here, as you can see, before I would go beyond this yellow line, but here I kind of want to make sure that less than half the car is beyond the yellow line. So make sure that your wheel is still tilted at 90 degrees, but straighten the wheel before you accelerate, because if you don't, you're gonna go into the tire barrier to your right. So gradually, actually I still use a lot of the, this is a tough corner to really talk about, because there's just not a lot of markers to really look at, because in the cup layout on iRacing, at least, you're going a bit deeper before you turn right onto the start finish, and that at least has tire barriers for you to rely upon. Here there's nothing. It's literally like a parking lot. I wouldn't call it a Tokadrome because it drives much better than Tokadrome, but yeah, I'm just running a lot of different lines. I'm just trying to convey the best possible advice to you guys as possible. So, so here I'm kind of beyond. What is this? I'm turning my wheel a lot. I'm not exactly sure what angle this is. Like 300 degrees, I guess. I don't really recall turning the wheel that much. But you're gonna have to turn your wheel a lot in this corner, because if you don't, you're not really gonna go anywhere, basically. So in this lap, I kind of go beyond the yellow line, and try not to hit that auto light wall, because I think in a practice session I actually did hit that wall a lot. Well, I mean, not well. Yeah, I hit that wall and damaged my car once in another practice session. So it's actually a lot easier than you think, because the wall just comes at you so quick. So be as close to this yellow line to your left as possible. Obviously, don't go beyond it, because wall. And that is a lap of Sonoma 15.359. So that walkthrough was probably longer than I thought it would be. Apologies for not really giving a great walkthrough. Sonoma is one of those tough tracks where experience just plays a big factor, because of how there's not a lot of braking markers. There's a lot of elevation. There's a lot of opportunity for you to lose time, just because of the complexity of the track. So, especially the IRL 2007 layout, which is not really used often outside of IndyCar on iRacing. So most of them use the Cup layout. Obviously, NASCAR uses the Cup layout, and the GT cars, they usually use Sonoma Long. So, which incorporates part of the back half is more of the NASCAR layout. I think they have a bit of the IRL and layout within the long layout. I don't really remember, but I tried to give this guide to the best of my ability. If there are things that you say that are definitely untrue, feel free to say it in the comments, because I'm always learning as well. I'm always learning. It took me a while just to learn the track, so the guide didn't really come out on time, as well as the setup needing a lot of work. So setup is decent. With regard, the diff needs work. The gearing is fine. Downforce, I don't think you really have to touch that much. Ride heights need a bit of a fix. I don't think it's optimal yet. I kind of don't really want to tweak it anymore. So, and yeah, the diff definitely needs to work. Throttle-wise, it's not the best. But other than that, it's pretty good. And the rest will be your talent. So it's a good base for people to use. It's a lot different than what other people use, just because of how I usually like softs. I usually like using a soft front spring and a soft rear spring, so it's completely different. Setup wise, it's a lot different from what a lot of other people use. So, if you like the video, leave a like. If you dislike the video, I'm not going to stop you from putting a dislike, but if you don't like it, well, at least tell me why you don't like it, so I can always improve. Feel free to go in the comment section, say thank you, or say this was a complete waste of my time. Why are you on YouTube? Blah 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 blah. If you really like what I do, feel free to subscribe. I have a lot of different content on this channel, but these days it's only iRacing because I only have time for iRacing, and kind of just want to play other games just for the sake of playing other games and not making YouTube videos. iRacing, I don't mind making YouTube videos because it's fun making YouTube videos on iRacing. So, enough rambling. Have a good day. Hope to see you on the track this week. Setup will be posted, and don't forget to watch the season finale of the Verizon IndyCar Series at Sonoma. I feel like I'm doing an ad right now. NBCSN. I forgot what time it is. What time the race is, and it is oh boy, it is 6:30 Eastern on NBCSN. If you're in Canada, Sportsnet 360. If you don't have cable, Motorsport Streams, Reddit. Thank you guys for watching. See you on the track.